Welcome to a football show, Monday edition, Super Bowl week here on the 440 Sports Network. That is Paul Kuharsky. I'm Braden Gall, brought to you by Sinkers Beverage. Involved in the show, please jump into the comment section, ask some questions. We will get into the latest in Titans coaching staff. We will get into what actually happened in the Bill Belichick Hall of Fame vote. PK, as a voter, will be able to tell us a lot about what went down. We will get into the Senior Bowl, the Shrine Game. What do those All-Star games actually mean for the Tennessee Titans? More importantly, what does it tell us about this draft class and how it ties into the Titans' needs? That's really good stuff, I think, for Tennessee Titans fans. And at the end, we'll dive into a Super Bowl. Me and Nick will do a little bit more of this on Thursday's episode, but PK, this will be your last chance on this show to talk about it. So I'll get your thoughts and your pick on the Super Bowl, of course, as is tradition. Good morning, good afternoon, fellas, says Bustin' Diamond. Hope everybody is safe and warm and has power back, and kids are going back to school soon. We shall see. I am on day number 9 without power at my house. PK, good afternoon.
I'm sure that's very enjoyable. At least you're somewhere warm. No school here yet in Brentwood either. Whatever. At least the kids got ball practice, so he's got that going for him.
My wife is real happy about not being in her house for the last 9 days or 8 days, 7 days, whatever it is at this point. So lots of stuff to get to. Again, Sinkers Beverages, shop local businesses. Please do so after this week, last 10 days, as well as all of 26. Sinkers Beverages, local business, providing local service to local customers with people who live here in the market. And, of course, obviously they're committed to you. So make sure you check out Sinkers Beverages. You could go buy a local products at that local business, including all the best local craft beer. They are an award-winning craft beer fridge, and you can go, and they got almost every single possible brewery in Nashville, Tennessee. You can go get those beers at Sinkers Beverages. Go buy a good local craft beer and enjoy, in moderation, a couple beers with your friends. It's good for your health, promise. That's not just me saying that, PK. That's science. That's science.
Science. You told me my internet was bad. I think your internet is bad, so we'll see who wins that contest.
I am out here in the sticks. I'm in Wilco with one L, Paul. we only have one L in this Wilco. All right. So quickly here on the staff, I know they hired a stretch. They are hiring, and they're going to hire a nickel corner. There's still a couple of slots left to go. The coaching staff for the Tennessee Titans and Robert Saleh's new staff. So where are we at right now on that, and what is it telling you so far about the entirety of the staff and the picture it's painting about what kind of team they're going to be?
Well, I think hiring a nickel coach is very interesting. From what I could find, only 2 teams have them. Dallas is one. Philly had one. Maybe it's the Bears that have one. That's a very dedicated position. I mean, obviously nickel is very important, and you're in nickel a lot, but how many guys are you dealing with there? You know, you probably got a cornerback, a safety, and a linebacker, and maybe an understudy involved in that. So that's some very specific coaching, which is great. And that's going to be a very interesting thing to keep track of. Rob Reeder did not do well as the guy in Brian Callahan's ear. In the the debut game in Denver where Alec Iamaner landed with his knee in bounds. We don't know how much Reederer was misadvising there, how much Callahan was misinterpreting, but the guy in the coach's ear has to be exceptionally clear and definitive to his head coach in a situation like that. We can presume he wasn't, because Callahan came out on the wrong side of that. New hire is Cade Knox, who was with Brian Daboll and the Giants, and is a Harvard guy. And I think it's generally a good sign when that guy is, an Ivy Leaguer. As I'm wearing my Columbia thing. I look, it's not an Ivy Leaguer like me, more of a political science major who wound up, in
right.
sports journalism. An Ivy Leaguer has probably got a statistical probabilities background, which I don't pretend that I fall in that bucket at all. But those are the kind of guys that you want. And that looks exceptionally young, right? John Stryker looked exceptionally young when he wound up here with Mike Vrabel. He's now a vice president in the Patriots organization that's going to the Super Bowl. And obviously the Titans made, a bad decision, punted on a 4th and 2 from their opponent's 40 in a bad situation. But by the end of Vrabel's tenure, we were pretty confident that they were going to do the right thing in terms of clock management, in terms of challenge flags, in terms of fourth downs, and be able to explain to you their rationale for doing things and all of that. Saleh apparently was not great at that with the Jets and has hired somebody who looks to be better than what the Titans had. So I think that is significant. And we'll see where those two things go. Staff still filling out, though, today. Saleh said was the first day of gathering who is under contract or in line. And so they're getting started over there.
What's interesting about what he said, I think TD asked him about sort of the balance between analytics and old school football view of decision making. And I think his answer is the right. I mean, people, look, young stats, sabermetrics folks, they don't want to hear you say, well, it's you want to acquire as much data as possible and use that data to make the right decision. Some folks just go by the book black and white. It tells you on 4th and 3, down by 6, with this much time left in the game on this yard line, you do X. And that's fine. I actually like a guy who says, we want all that data. Give us all that data. But at the end of the day, I still have to be the one who makes the call based on maybe a third-string guard is in there and Jeffrey Simmons is being blocked by a third-string guard. That's an obvious
example. Or the weather is
bad,
I'm thinking, things like that.
Right.
Those are the two.
And as he's saying that, I'm like, I'm not sure what decision you'd be making as a defensive coach with Jeffrey Simmons. But anyway, well, that's neither here nor there. What's interesting is, what I like about this is you want the guy in your ear to give you the best possible data. But at the end of the day, at the end of the moment, as the clock is ticking, you're the one who holds the flag in the hand. You're the one who can call timeout. You're the one who says we're punting or we're kicking or we're going for it. So eventually it does stop. The head coach has to make the decision. You just want the best possible information to make that decision as accurately as possible. It doesn't mean you're going to go with what this guy says to do every time.
Yeah, and you also want to minimize the decisions you're making in the game, right? There are going to be a few that are very situational to the game, but overall, philosophically, you've made some decisions before the game. Against this team, we are more prone to run this play in this situation because of what we scouted, and we're going to lean that direction unless something changes dramatically. And so this week we'll tend to be aggressive on a 4th and 1, running our running back at their right defensive tackle because we see a weakness there and a mismatch in our favor, et cetera, et cetera. And those are game specific things as opposed and broad strategy kind of attitude things. And then, you're not making those decisions as much in the moment as people maybe like to think. You've discussed that during the week, and you have a broad plan for narrow situations.
Yeah, no question about that. Z Dean says the hiring seemed good, but hard to know. Hope Dayball stays around for a little because it seems like he brought a lot of his guys and would leave if they are all new hires again.
Yeah, this thing is a little bit exaggerated that Dayball could take all of his guys with him. They have contracts now.
Right.
So a position coach that comes with him, Shea Tierney, his quarterback coach, is getting a 2-year contract. So unless Dayball takes him with him and is making him his coordinator, he's bound to hear. Cade Knox, the guy that we're talking about, who's the game management guy. I don't know what kind of contract he got, but also there's a possibility he comes here and he's a Dayball guy coming in, and in a year that he's a solid guy. So I think you have to allow for things to evolve. But Dayball doesn't have control over all of these guys in a year. Solid does.
And I also think the last few slots that are available on this coaching staff, I would just err on the side of assuming that their strategy continues, with the focus being when they picked Robert Saleh over our candidates, when they have gone the direction they've gone in almost every decision, they have gone with experience over sort of nouveau chic development, young players at the key positions. They have gone with heavy experience. So I think that's their goal. We shall see. There's been a lot of rumblings about the names that have been out there. Nick on Thursday said that, he's got a good idea of who the staff is going to be, but they just have, he said that they have been hired. They just not have been announced yet. So we'll see. We'll see. It's a little gray area right now when it comes to that coaching staff. So we'll see what the staff like. Okay. Sinkers Beverages, everybody, make sure you go support good local business, 5-time liquor store of the year. Search Uber Eats and have them deliver the booze directly to your house.
Let's stick with the staff for 1 second. I wrote a piece about Carmen Priscillo, the new offensive line coach, And one of the things that Saleh said in a less seen environment that I included in this piece, he really loved what Brasillo has done. And Brasillo has a reputation, people I talked to around the league said he gets a lot out of guys without big pedigrees, right? If you look at the 2022 Raiders, they had a first rounder, a third rounder, a fifth rounder, and two guys that were not drafted. Now, that's kind of the group you're going to get generally at a position, right? You might have one guy with a big pedigree and one guy with the okay pedigree and another guy who's a late rounder, and then a couple guys who are nobodies relatively. And you need out of that group to get some cohesive and quality play. And that's what Brasillo did that year. Derek Carr was eighth in least sacks. And Josh Jacobs ran for 1,600 yards and I think 8 or 9 touchdowns. That's really good offensive line contribution to your run game and to pass protection. And so Saleh said to a smaller group of us, those are the kind of coaches I'm looking for. Anybody can coach first rounders and big pedigrees. I'm looking for guys that can get the most out of third day draft picks is really what he was talking about. And so that's fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh rounders and undrafted. And those are the kind of guys the Titans are going to have a lot of, particularly early, because we know the roster is bereft of talent. We know there are only so many draft picks coming in. They may get a couple big ticket free agents, but generally speaking, we have not seen the Titans hit well enough with their high picks and do enough with these later round, third day picks. And they have to hit more consistently with guys like that. We need to see somebody bring the best out of a James Williams and somebody bring the best out of, a Marcus Harris. And so he thinks he's putting together a coaching staff of guys like Brasillo who can do that. And how can you not like hearing that?
Yeah. I was talking with James Foster on Hot Read and looking back at some of the picks that were maximized, in particular safety and linebacker, right? Those are two that get maximized traditionally. You had Jayon Brown, you had David Long, late round, I think both fifth-round picks that were very good. Obviously, Kevin Byard and Monty Hooker were very good safety selections. We've seen some of the depth that they've acquired recently. You look at the offensive line, they need the Jackson Slaters of the world to contribute to center and guard. You don't necessarily expect a tackle to be a seventh round pick for UDFA, but the interior offensive line is where you need those guys to be great. Obviously, Peter Skoronski's job. Unsure it's going to happen with Cushenberry. We probably there needs to be a right guard. That Jackson Slater, is that somebody they go after in with pick 101 or whatever? That's about where you start looking at center and interior offensive linemen in this draft class is kind of the fourth round on. So that is what you're talking about there. Retro Dak says, any chance Seattle Patriots assistants are for DC, or should we be worried about how long it's taking? I don't think you should be worried. I think there's just
no reason to worry about anything. Yeah. He's got a plan, and it's contingent on some other things that are still unfolding.
I like the bald, inclusive coaching staff. PK, did you ask Saleh what was his hair routine?
No, but I know that a guy that is that bald is shaving daily or every other day at the very, very least. And I can't believe the attention when I put that collage together. I realized after the fact that other people were hitting on it too. I got like 300,000 clicks on that collage. For a non-video post to get that much attention, really, really impressive. So thank you to everybody that liked it.
Gus Jabari, good to see you. Gus Bradley would make another ball hire. LOL, unless he goes to Arizona. Should the Titans sign Joey Bosa 4-3 defense? It's interesting. We'll see. Did anyone see the Dan Jeremiah mock draft? I have not. He had us taking the tackle from Miami. My real question isn't if it makes sense, but rather, do you think the fan base will go nuclear if we go tackle? I saw another one with Caden Proctor in the second round to the Titans, and I thought, man, another tackle would be an interesting one.
I just think the story I told about what Brasillo's done with offensive line groups maybe puts them in position, I would hope, puts them in position to do what most of us hope, which is stay away from the offensive line in the first 3 rounds of this draft and attack other positions that have been avoided for too long. High.
And I will say the majority of mock drafts have Fernando Mendoza going 1. They have Arvell Reese going 2, and they have Francis Mogawa going from Miami, the offensive tackle, going 3. That puts the Titans at 4 with their choice of wide receiver or edge throughout the course of that first round. We'll get into more of that in just a second. All right, here's what I want you to do. I want you to explain to everybody the Hall of Fame voting process, why Bill Belichick got 39 votes. You need how many? Tell everybody how many you need to get in on the first ballot. Are there other factors with other players and personalities that were more deserving of this guy that pushed him down a few ballots? Is there any reasonable explanation as to why this took place? I'm going to refresh my internet, and you can go ahead and start on this process, right?
Okay. Nobody knows how many votes he got. So, one voter wrote about him probably getting, or presumed he got 39 votes, and Mike Florio took that and ran with that as fact. Certainly, Ernst & Young and the Hall of Fame know how many votes he got.
Okay.
We do not know how many votes anybody got. And the voters don't know who got. We know who the final 7 from the modern era finalists are. We know nothing about the 5 among L.C. Greenwood, Ken Anderson, Roger Craig, Bill Belichick, and Robert Kraft. Those 5 who we could vote for 3 of, which is a foolish way to package contributor, coach, and seniors together. And it really decreases the odds of multiple getting in. Last year was the first year of multiple of that packaging, and only one got in, a senior, Sterling Sharp. So look, what could happen, Mike Sando very eloquently put this out. How this could happen is, a couple people don't like the fact that they made coaches eligible immediately without a 5-year delay, and thought Belichick could reemerge, and then like the idea of a coach back in the league already being in the Hall of Fame and not being fully retired. A couple people could have held Spygate against him. I'm sure that one person, vehemently anti-cheating voter, did so. A couple others, and I spoke against this idea. Some people like to play chess with their votes, and they'll say, well, Belichick is a shoo-in. He's going to get over 40 or more votes. I can take my vote and apply it to my favorite senior or to Kraft to enhance their case and try to get them to 40 or over. I actually spoke about that and said, if we mess around with that too much, we will potentially look foolish if it backfires. And I don't think that's strictly the reason he didn't get in, but it probably contributed to the reason that he didn't get in. So there are not unreasonable reasons. And Va Gregorian from the Kansas City Star wrote that he voted for the 3 seniors because the 3 seniors flash onto the ballot. They're not definitely going to be renominated next year. If they don't make it this year, this might be their one flash out of the senior pool onto the ballot, whereas Belichick and very likely Kraft will be again the contributor and the coach candidate next year. L.C. Greenwood, Ken Anderson, Roger Craig could disappear if the senior committee says, well, they didn't garner the support, and so we'll try somebody different. Now, in this age, I would say renominate the seniors and continue to renominate the seniors until they get their chance. It's an embarrassment. There's no reason that he shouldn't have been in on the first ballot. Quite frankly, I think he should have been unanimous, so we wouldn't know the vote. I certainly voted for him. And I think that people who didn't vote for him should be transparent about it. From what I've seen, Gregorian from Kansas City, Mike Chappell from Indianapolis have both written about why they didn't vote for him. And I think others should step forward and do the same. We ask for transparency all the time. Now that we're at the middle of a story, we should provide it.
Would you make changes to the process? Is it a tricky situation in which case you're trying to do the best possible job and quirks kind of result in stuff like this? Or is there a problem somewhere that's pretty obvious that you think needs to be fixed?
Well, my obligation and our obligation is to do what we're asked to do by the Hall of Fame under their structure. And, we have room to input there, but we're certainly not people shaping the structure. They wanted to make it harder for people to get in. And last year they implemented a system that assured that's the case. And if you do the math, there's lots written out there about the math, and it's definitely harder. I would expect this to be a 3 or 4 person class again. But I think I'm very uncomfortable voting contributors and coaches against players. It's a player league first. I think out of a coach with, Belichickian credentials, I'm going to lean players. And out of a contributor, outside of a contributor with Craftian credentials, I'm going to lean players.
Well, I don't think, why don't they just do those into separate categories?
Well, they used to, and then I think they felt like too many people were getting in, or I think it used to be like there'd be a coach up one year and a contributor up the next year, and that seems a reasonable way to do it for me. I think there'll be some giant backlash here. They don't want to seem reactionary, but I don't know that they have a choice.
Yeah, interesting stuff there. Of course, I do applaud the folks who have come out and said, here's why. And it does sound like it wasn't just the necessary amount of people just being, I hate this guy.
I think there's none of that. First off,
right.
Bill Belichick, in terms of Hall of Fame help, I mean, you're more likely to be able to get in touch with Bill Belichick to talk about a Hall of Fame candidacy than under any other circumstance. He was on the Centennial Committee. He's impassioned about the Hall of Fame. Like the fact that Bill Belichick is a tough guy to ask a question to. When I was up there previewing Titans Patriots the year it was freezing when Drew Bennett ended up dropping that ball, we really think that has a big bearing on my feeling for Bill Belichick's career. I think you're really underestimating humans. And if you think players and coaches are the ones to vote for that, you think they're less grudge-holdy than reporters? You're really out of touch with how players.
This isn't baseball, PK.
Yeah,
it feels like baseball has a lot more of that. No, like is that not? Well, so here's the thing. Let's look. There was huge Preds news today. Barry Trotz is stepping down at some point, and he's going to retire. And one of the ways you tell me if this applies in the room over the course of time. Pekka Rinne, in my opinion, isn't really a Hall of Fame goaltender in the NHL. He's very, very close. And if he gets into the Hall of Fame, it will be almost exclusively because the tie, in this case, goes to the person who generally treats people extremely well and is more willing to talk and is more willing to build relationship with reporters. And I'm not saying it's the reason you get in, but if the tie goes to the runner, so to speak, in this situation, I do think the guy who is a giant asshole has probably got less of a chance to get in than the one who was constantly going out of his way to do more for the people that are going to vote for him. Again, we could say that's fair or otherwise. I don't know if Pekka Rinne is going to be a Hall of Famer, but he's on that line. He's very much on the line. Do you think any of that kind of dynamic plays out at any point, not just with Belichick, but like ever in the Hall of Fame vote for football?
No, I don't. I really don't. I don't think they're really ties amongst guys that are. I mean, there are. Look, Reggie Wayne and Torrey Holt are virtually tied. Are their personalities playing into it? Absolutely not. I mean, it's just you like vanilla or chocolate, kind of. They're just very, very close, and so they're canceling each other out because they're so close. And so Andre Johnson was in there, and I think you can make the case that Andre Johnson was a notch better. And now Larry Fitzgerald comes along, and you could certainly make the case that Larry Fitzgerald hopscotches both of them. And this voting system, I think in the old voting system, we all agreed both of those guys are going to get in. And now with this new voting system, I feel like neither of those guys are going to get in because it's hard for them to separate, and they're going to split votes for the duration of their time. But in terms of the personality thing, I think a little bit of a cultural thing, if you will. I think a cultural thing and an age thing hurt Terrell Owens. There was an old faction of the Hall of Fame that just could not wrap its head around T.O.'s the way T.O. was.
Yeah.
And a younger faction
you mean good at football?
Yeah, you know what I mean. I
know.
The diva receiver kind of thing, and I think that cost him a couple years, and that's not necessarily fair. But that wasn't people not liking T.O. For how he interacted with them. That was people having trouble with the way he carried himself, and then taking that and carrying that into football. Like, he called out his quarterback, and did that hurt the team dynamic? And there was a whole, and that's been well documented, I think.
It's ironic that you use the phrase, it's just really hard for them to separate, talking about Torrey Holt and Reggie Wayne, who are Hall of Famers pretty much because they were great at creating separation.
Separation from defenders, but not so much from each other.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Sinkers Beverages, everybody. Make sure you check out the great and wonderful and amazing Sinkers Beverages in East Nashville. Over 40 years of serving the community, so there's no reason to stop shopping there now. They also have a sister store, Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville, that's been serving the community for over 50 years, also award-winning. So make sure you check out one of those two great local businesses. 2026 PK, the year of the local business. Support good local journalism, paulkarski.com and 440 Sports, as well as good local businesses. If you want a business to stay alive in your community and you are able to spend a few dollars, in particular at places like breweries or restaurants where a week and a half of lost revenue is a huge deal after the last 2 weeks, please go out and support them this week or this weekend. Just spend a few dollars if you can at a good local business. That is the message from Sinkers Beverages and from 440 and from PK.com. Okay.
Do twice as much.
Yes.
I mean, exactly. Somebody like me, if you remember, things stay consistent, but those restaurants, those bars, those liquor shops, it's a whole different deal. And they really do. January is a tough month as it is. From what I've learned, it's a break-even month for a lot of these folks, and they're not breaking even with what the weather's done to them. So factor that into your decisions, please.
No question about it. Good words there, PK. All right, so the Senior Bowl took place. It was a thing. I did not get a chance to go down there. My wife and kids were up here in need, so I don't know what I did to help them, but we are here warm, and I didn't get a chance to go down there. And so the real thing that, I don't want to speak to a lot of individual players. I feel much more comfortable if I am down there talking to scouts and to personnel people and getting off the record stuff and watching them in person. I just don't love coming on here and saying, well, Malachi Fields, wide receiver for Notre Dame, was outstanding, if I didn't get a chance to see it with my own eyes. But I can lay out a couple of important things that I want everyone to remember, because there was, going back to Cam Ward, and if you'll remember, a big part of Mike Borgonzi and Chad Brinker and Brian Callahan and a lot of their conversation at the time around Cam Ward was I got the quote from Brian and down at the Senior Bowl last year that said, hey, this is not a Joe Burrow situation. We knew Joe early in the process. We were taking Joe Burrow. This is not one of those situations. Nobody has separated themselves. That was like the second to last week of January. By the time we left the combine, PK, it sounds like the Titans were pretty strongly committed to Cam Ward, that they kind of fell in love with him during the meeting process. They went down to the Senior Bowl, or they went down to Pro Day at Miami as well, and that's when he did the famous, you're going to regret not taking me kind of deal. But I do want to say, I think these all-star games are interesting and they're important to scout individual players, but the vast majority of the hay is in the barn on this stuff. The Titans brass wasn't even down there last week. The front office heads of state, as it were, the board of trustees, whatever you want to call it, all those former GMs and GMs weren't even down there. So I think the vast majority of what you see from the Shrine Bowl or from the Senior Bowl is maybe a couple of individual players will go up or go down, but by and large, it's still about the scouting. And then when you get to the combine, maybe a couple of measurements might change a player's grade, but by and large, the only thing that changes a player's perception by the teams is the personal conversations and interviews that took place. So the vast majority of tape is still what these teams are using to evaluate players. I feel like a broken record at this point.
Would have been the same if they went to the Senior Bowl. Look, I know you guys love going down there and you get to hang out, drink some beers after watching some drills and discuss the hell out of it. These guys watched the film of the Senior Bowl. They had their people conduct the interviews at the Senior Bowl, which they watch, and they get to talk to them at the combine, at the pro days, at the whole thing. Their scouting process will be plenty complete. If they don't know what they're scouting for, what does it matter if they're there? The coaching staff isn't in place. They don't know what they're looking for yet. So you Illuminati, your Senior Bowl Illuminati, it's more important to you than it is to them. It is. I know you want to go down there and sit with Stoney and Zach and be these big insiders who talk to to Patrick Wu. But that's not that big a deal. It's not.
So the vast majority of again, if they are looking at let's find a player that they might be very interested in here that was down there. Malachi Fields is an interesting one, right? Big, tall wide receiver out of Notre Dame. He's a guy that was sort of a middle to day 3 pick, kind of going into this draft. How he performed in a couple of days of practice and how he performed in the game, while good, might cement some of the things that they felt and they liked about this player's film and his tape. And then they'll interview the player at the combine, get the official measurements, and that might tweak a guy in terms of maybe he's wide receiver 12 instead of wide receiver 13, but he's not moving a lot in their board. Most of the work happens, of course, with the game tape that takes place this year or the year before. If you've got 2 years worth of tape, I'd be really curious to talk to somebody in the Titans front office and scouting department about how much they value like the team that the player was currently on. Like, does tape just go out the window if a player transfers and either goes down or goes up in performance? Like, I'm curious how much, because Brian Callahan was very open about this with Cam Ward last year. I like the fact that he's been dropped into locker rooms multiple times and had to earn his way into a level of respect with his teammates. That's a new take. Again, he's not the coach anymore. But that was an interesting twist that he used to explain sort of the evaluation of Cam Ward through the process. I'm curious about how much that kind of stuff matters, the transferring and the moving and adapting quickly to new schemes. It seems like there is a direct translation to being drafted and dropped into a brand new locker room in the NFL.
I think if you do it well, I mean, if you've handled it well, and you probably have handled it well if you're a good prospect coming out, that it's an unforeseen, maybe good benefit of NIL. There were other downsides to it. Consistency. I mean, Cam Ward's got his 6th offensive play caller since he went into college. That's not an upside of it, right? So offsetting fouls, if you will.
So here's how I would do this. I would take a look to start your draft analysis, because I know PK.com, you had a bunch of stuff. I wrote a bunch of stuff. You got Drew Beatty writing stuff. You can overreact to the Shrine Bowl. You can overreact to the Senior Bowl. Everyone's going to overreact to the Combine as well. But I do think there's a couple of things that I feel comfortable talking through as it pertains to the draft class going into this process. If you're going to look at now that the coaching staff is in place and we know what the coaching staff is going to look like, I think there's a couple of major things here, and we can kind of work through each of them pretty broadly. I do believe that if you look at the top 100s, if you look at James Foster's top 100, if you look at performances at the Senior Bowl and at Shrine and etc., I do think that the Titans are to some degree that there is a lot of depth at the 3 main positions of need in the top 100. Maybe not at the top of the first round, but I think there's a lot of wide receiver depth in the middle round, in the middle, second and third round. There's a lot of corners in the top 100. I think there's 16 or 17 corners in the top 100. Different types of corners, which the Titans need. They could use a nickel corner. They could use a boundary corner. They could use a man corner. They could use an off-man corner. And I think this is less important, but I do think there are interesting edge players that if you wanted to go back to the top of the second round with an edge player, that maybe you could find a contributor there. Hard to find those guys in the 3rd and 4th round at that position, but there is some interesting depth, and all of those positions did well in the All-Star games, and I think will do well in the Combine. And I think that's just showing people that these 3 positions of need happen to align with 3 deeper positions of this class, even if it's not the same at the top 5, 10, 12 slots in the draft.
That's the unfortunate part, and we've talked about that. But I do feel, and I'm not as deep in it, I got to offer that preamble, not as deep in it as you are, but I definitely feel that way about corner, right? They can find some corner help in the 3rd and 4th round for sure. And they will. I'm confident that they will. And there is help, but what they need, we talked about this last year. They're kind of building the depth chart backwards. Femi Oladejo, your number 2 pass rusher, probably, if he pans out the way they envision, but certainly not the front of the line guy. And you're getting him in the second round. So if you're getting your number 2 pass rusher in the second round, not that every draft is the same in terms of depth and quality of depth by round and all of that, but it seems like a natural feeling to think if you're getting your number 2 pass rusher in the 50s in the second round in 1 year, that you're going to have to draft your number 1 pass rusher higher than that. And now we look higher than that and we think, well, it's not, there's no clear cut number 1 guy. And certainly, if you take a guy at 4, it's Bain, probably Bailey, maybe, and they both have a hole, and there's not a guaranteed, guy who's going to come in and transform your game. Now you like the coach, you have to do it. The defensive line coach sounds great. The head coach is a really good defensive coach, but you'd like them to be coaching somebody who's better from the start.
I think one of the more interesting elements. I mean, look, I'm a trade down. I know I was trade down last year. I'm going to be trade down this year as well. That is, next year I will not be. Next year I will not be a trade down guy. And I do think if you can go
next year, hopefully they're drafting at 15th.
Right, and then you're fine. Right, and so I do think the hope is not to like create the haul that you normally get when you trade the number 1 overall pick, when you can get the number 3 pick and then a second rounder, and then a third rounder, and then a 1 next year. I don't think that's the goal. I think the goal is to just, can I get at 8 or 9 or 10 or 12 the exact same caliber of player at 4? In which case, it doesn't matter what you get in return. It just matters that you have more, because you're probably getting the same quality of player at 8 or 9 or 10. I don't think you need to move down to 22.
Well, I wouldn't move down to 22, because the consensus seems to be there are only 12, 14, 15 first rounders in this draft. You can't get outside of that. Now, it's not a consensus who those 12 are or whatever. You say 8 or 9. If it's 8 or 9, everybody's got their own number, but you can't get outside of your number, obviously. You can't be drafting a second rounder in the first round.
Yep. And that's where I'm at. I don't think you're not going to get a huge return if you can convince somebody in slot 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 to come up to 4. You're not going to get the bigger return as you might expect in a normal draft. So I can already see, like, they moved down to 9 and they get 2 seconds and everyone's losing their minds because it's not enough value. And I'm going, yeah, but you still drafted the same guy you were going to draft at 4, and now you have 2 extra seconds. And so therefore it is a smart decision. And so it's all relative to what you got to have 2 of these teams to make a trade. So that being said, I do think Bain or Bailey, one of those will be available at 7 or 8. I think if it's Lemon, Tate, or Tyson, one of those guys will be available at 8 or 9 potentially. So if it's corner, if it's Jermod McCoy or Mansour Delane or Avion Terrell, those guys are going to be available in the early teens. So it depends on which players you love, and to your point, where is the Titans line of grade? And I'll never
where's
forget
everybody else's line of grade.
Right.
You got to find the team that's got a bigger pool of first rounders there, and maybe a team that's got a bigger pool of first rounders there that wants to get to, like, now we're really kind of, I'm going to be a fantasy player. But if you trade down to 8 and you think your guy could still be there at 10, and somebody's desperate to get inside the top 12 because they think there's only 12 first rounders, and the board's staying true to their board, and they don't have a chance at anybody at 18, maybe you get up twice.
What year was Caleb Farley? 2021, is that correct?
I'm terrible at this game.
Okay, so Caleb Farley was. This is an example here of what as things work. We'll use kind of the looking backwards on this, and I think I've told the story on the show before. The Tennessee Titans, I think, had 19, maybe 20 players graded as first-round players in 2022. And they had 2 left on the board when the Colts were on the clock, the pick before them at 21. There were 2 players later. It was Kwity Paye and Caleb Farley. They were going to take Kwity Paye. And Kwity Paye goes to the Colts at 21. They only have 1 other player on their board graded as a first-round talent. It doesn't mean that they shouldn't have taken somebody else.
And Robinson loved Farley. He loved
him. Yeah. And so what happens is if you have the board vertically, horizontally, all the different ways, and it is very clear that this player, even with injury history that Caleb Farley had, was up here as a graded player, and everyone else is down here, that grade could be wrong. But you do have to kind of stick with your process. And so they were going to take Pay. He gets picked the pick before. I think it's safe to say Kwity Paye would have been a better player for the Titans than Caleb Farley. And they ended up getting Farley. And that's just how it worked. But there wasn't a lot of, like, from what I understand, there wasn't a lot of debate or discussion about that. They're like, no, this is the best graded player on our board, period. By a mile, we have to take him. And so then you take him. And so it doesn't mean it's perfect. It just, if the line on this draft is 11 or 12, that's how you have to evaluate it.
Yeah, right. And it's important we're talking about these lines. Now, they make the wrong judgments on the guy, right? Caleb Farley shouldn't have been there. Des Fitzpatrick, my understanding was the last guy in a significant group of wide receivers for them. And then there was another group that they considered lesser than that. Now, they were wrong about Des Fitzpatrick belonging in that group, but that's what they were doing. They traded up to get Des Fitzpatrick because he was the last guy to them in a section of wide receivers, after which they thought there was a significant drop-off. So they went to get the last guy in that group. So that makes perfect sense. What doesn't make perfect sense is how Des Fitzpatrick qualified in that group for them, because he turned out to be very bad. Take the second to last one from Diamond about Love and Downs. So we have to hope someone falls in love with Jeremiah Love or Downs and wants to trade up for one of those two. I'll say this about Downs. If the Titans had a better roster, now maybe it happens here, but if the Titans had a better roster, Downs, to me, is a Saleh type of guy, right? They play cover 3, and having that safety deep middle is Earl Thomas. He was in Seattle at the peak of Earl Thomas, who made that defense go, right? If they could have a guy like that, it would be a terrific thing for a Titans Robert Saleh defense. Now, I think you still have to consider it a luxury, because they have to be able to rush 4 to make that whole defense work, and they can't rush 4. So Downs would be back there hopeless, because he'd be there all day having the cover, because they can't get to the quarterback, and you have to get to the quarterback first, right? So you can't take the luxury of Downs before you can get to the quarterback.
So Downs is a really good. So I had two thoughts coming off that. Number one, I agree though that if you can convince somebody that the best, what you want if you're a Titans fan, again, if you look at every mock, that doesn't mean anything right now in the first week of February, but if you look at the mocks, you have largely Mendoza 1, you have Arvell Reese going 2, and then you have the offensive lineman out of Miami, Francis Moagawa, I think is how you say it, going 3. By and large, there's a lot of agreement right now with the mocks with those 3. What you want is you want the best player at a position, a clear-cut number 1 guy to be very good over the next few weeks in this process. You want Caleb Downs, you want Jeremiah Love, you want Sonny Styles, you want guys, Kenyon Sadiq potentially. I don't think he's in play at 4, but I think you want the guys who are the dude at a position to be worth a lot more, so that maybe you can convince someone to come up from 7 or 8 or 10 or 12. We'll give you a good deal. You come up and get this guy.
Somebody in better shape roster-wise than you.
Right. The Chiefs.
That's a running back away. That's a safety away. You know, I saw a good video by somebody, I can't remember who it was, about the Chiefs. Like, the Chiefs would be wise. I buy this. You don't know when Mahomes is going to be back from this ACL. They would be wise not to tank this year, but not to go all in here, and to keep gathering, and to do 2 years of rebuilding. You got a good pick this year. If things fall your way this year, great. But if it takes a second year to replenish the roster, then you'd be in position to make another 3-year dynastic kind of run, having replenished and replaced Kelsey, and maybe you get Jeremiah Love here if you can. And if you had 2 years of replenishing that roster with better picks and resetting your money and getting rid of some of your money guys and trading some of your guys who might be getting older, like, say, a McDuffie. And if you get 2 picks for McDuffie, and you could draft your next McDuffie and something else, how good a shape you might be in for 2027. There's a very convincing argument.
No, I don't necessarily, I see the logic behind it for sure, but it also brings up another angle to all of this, which is let's just go with Downs hypothetically, who I do not think is an option for the Titans, as you have laid out. But I also think there's another reason. He is not a high point coverage safety. That is not what he has put on film. He is an in the box, in between the tackles, elite, like, IQ guy, culture guy, all the things you guys are saying, great athlete, special teams guy, which you don't necessarily need. You have to consider the skills of the particular player and how they mesh with what you actually do have on the roster, which is not a lot. But you do have Kevin Winston right now. What are his strengths? Kevin Winston is a in the box. I can play. What he doesn't do well is cover high point safety.
And there goes to my primary argument about the depth between the best and average. What's the distance between a premier in the box safety and replacement level, if you will, or good in the box safety? It's nowhere near the difference between a premier corner and a good corner. It's nowhere near the difference between a good pass rusher and a premier pass rusher. And that's why, to me, it's a luxury. Same thing with the running back. I mean, Jeremiah Love can be a premier running back, but what's the difference between a premier running back and a good running back as opposed to a premier receiver and a good receiver? I think those gaps are huge. That's why I call certain picks luxury picks, because you need at the premier positions where an elite guy is so much better. Those are the positions where the Titans have to get premier guys.
Yeah, and so again, if you're looking at linebacker, again, these are more like these are more 4th, 5th, 6th round picks in this draft. But if you look at linebacker, and the scouting report on a linebacker is unbelievable run fits, great in traffic, sideline to sideline against the run,
instinctual,
and it's terrible against the pass. That doesn't match up with Cedric Gray.
You can find those guys,
but you're also you're drafting redundancy
to pair with Cedric
when you don't need to. You have to draft Kyle Lewis out of Pittsburgh, who is a converted safety, who's 229, who can play in space. He's a great coverage linebacker. You want a great coverage linebacker to go with a great tackling.
Yeah, and he could be working with that nickel coach with Marcus Harris and whoever they bring in.
Yeah. Now here's the good news for Titans fans at corner. They need all of them. So you don't have to think of skill sets when you think of corner. They need a slot corner in the nickel. They need an outside boundary corner who's great in press coverage. They also need a great corner who's off. And because if you look at Robert Saleh, he runs a lot of quarters. He runs a lot of 3 deep. He runs a lot of 6-man coverage. Very rarely does he have 3 linebackers on the field. So nickel is even more important as he's showing us with his coach selection. So again, and this is why I think, and this is what, when I think through this and I think through the top pick for the Titans, pick 4, it is why Ruben Bain does not hit as hard as I like him to in like my gut and my instincts and my brain. They need speed off the edge. If you are pairing traits, this team does not have a wide 9 the way Robert Saleh wants someone to scream off the edge. And if he's looking for someone to scream off the edge,
Bain can be 7, but can't be 9.
It's David Bailey if you're looking for that. Or if that's the skill set you're looking for, there are more of those guys at 35 that might be available for this team, which aren't Femi. Like the key with Femi is if he develops into his best self, he is sort of a stocky, hold down the edge. Like he's kind of the bigger guy. If you want R. Mason Thomas out of Oklahoma, bendy speed guy off the edge. Cassius Howell out of A&M, bendy speed guy off the edge. They don't do a lot of run stuffing. And so if you've already got Femi who can play the run hypothetically, if he develops into that kind of player, then who knows? Now, Keldrick Falk, for example, out of Auburn, that's a guy who is supposed to be a true 3-down sort of all situations, more of a defensive end in a 4-3. Huge frame, little inconsistent for me. Motor needs to be proven. But that's the guy that actually fits what the scheme could need a little bit more. Whereas is Ruben Bain truly a 3-down defensive end? I don't know. Is he an off-the-edge screamer? I don't know. Very good football player.
Yeah.
But you got to think of the skill sets as well.
Logan Grady says, just draft future Hall of Famers. Doesn't matter what guy. Well, it's hard to project future Hall of Famers at the top of this draft.
Bill Belichick's not a Hall of Famer.
Right. And Cade says before that, when Ohio State asked Downs to play center field, he did it really well. They just didn't ask it of him very often.
Very good player, by the way.
The Titans would put Winston at the big nickel position. Just a thought. Conceivable. Yeah.
Sure. I just think if you have Winston and Hooker, like you need someone to pair with that group with Gray and no corners right now. The other good thing about the receiver,
and I don't think you're banking on Hooker long term anymore. I was really disappointed
fair.
In Hooker this last season.
I think that's fair.
Maybe
but who knows? The other thing with not just with corner is that with wide receiver, you don't need to limit yourself to style at wide receiver either. You don't need to pick a skill set at wide receiver. Even if you keep Ridley, even with DK and Io Manor developing, hopefully, you can still go get any type of player you want. Carnell Tate and Chris Brazzell are different players.
I want him to have speed. I need him to have speed. Speed, speed, speed. They're not fast enough, and they need a
Well, I agree with
threat.
that.
So whatever pack, I agree with you. He could be whatever kind of wide receiver, but the one thing he's got to have is speed.
Well, I don't know. Mekhi Lemon's not going to grade out real fast, but man, I think he's the best receiver in the class. So Tyson will grade out very well, but if he's healthy, he might be the pick at 4. I am more convinced that they are going to try to do more with less on defense, and they're going to go big to support Cam on offense. That's how I feel. So
I think that makes perfect sense.
I'm a Mekhi Lemon guy all the way. That's
you are. Yes, you are. Yes. I can agree with you on that.
Can confirm. Multiple sources. Bane doesn't hit hard because if you put your normal arm length, he can't reach you. Let's see here. This is from Big 2033. It feels like there are no right answers. That's sort of part of the problem. Seems like David Bailey or pick a wide receiver. There you go there. Mekhi Lemon for Ward is in an RPO would be ideal. Let's see here. PK wants Casey Concepcion if you want speed. Texas A&M wide receiver.
I like Casey Concepcion.
You could get him later.
Where can you get him? Can you get him in the second?
Maybe 35, but that's a risk. If you're letting him do that.
I'd like him there. I'd like him there a lot.
But he could be available. Now, again, if we just said you don't want to trade back beyond a certain number, but you kind of did the fantasy football thing where you're like, if I can just stockpile, I got to do it. If they can move back to 13 and get 28 and have 35,
get Concepcion at 28.
Then you can get Concepcion maybe at 28. So I do think he's going to be a mid to late 20s. I don't think he falls to the second round, but if you can get him in that last 6-8 picks,
he feels like he fits. He feels like he fits. Kansas City.
Right. They do have a lot of those kind of players. That's for sure. Are we closer on offense or defense to being a competitive unit? That's a good question. I think it's offense, probably. Strangely enough.
Yeah, I don't know that they're close. I mean, if you give this unit good players, is it close? Well, who are the good players?
Well, I think the both offensive and defensive lines were in good shape we'll call it good shape at the end of the year, right? But the defensive line lacks that true coming off the edge power and pass rush.
Plus, I don't think Sweat fits. So
I think the offense is in better shape. The younger talent last year that developed was good. Cedric Gray's developing potentially into a star, but both Femi and Winston had major concerns last year. I think you're with Skoronski and Latham and developing and the running game doing what it was doing and Cam Ward and if Ridley's healthy and back, I just think the offense is much further along. And so you could supercharge that by adding a nice piece at the top end of the draft as a receiver. So I do think the offense is further along because the defense, there are 5 missing players right now on the depth chart.
The Erhardt-Perkins system, how fast is that coming? Because there's option routes and people being on the same page, and I could see that taking time.
Logan says Zachariah Branch on day 2. I think he'd be a good short, quick passing game, great on screens, great in space, can do things after the fact, extremely explosive. That's the speed you want, right? So Zachariah Branch, he's got to get a little bit more polished as a route runner, a little bit bigger, but he's a very useful player. I think is moving up boards, probably more of a like 66 overall, maybe. If you're looking pick potentially for the Titans, top of the 3rd round, maybe for him. Since we are weak at edge and cornerback, it's good. Saleh gets to pick from his day 1 instead of trying to force current big salaries to change. There will have to be some spending in free agency to solve some of these problems. I imagine depth at corner is one of them.
Yeah, I've seen it's out there like that. This need to spend in free agency with this cap runs hard against the draft to develop. No, it doesn't. I mean, when you're at the beginning, this is how it works. You have to supplement the draft develop by spending the free agent money you have as a result of not being able to develop. And when you can't develop the bad draft picks that your previous regime had, you don't re-sign them, thus you have the money. So they've said, we're going to have to spend in free agency for 2-3 years here, probably 3 years. This year, next year, they're going to be supplementing the roster with free agents. It marries to the draft part of things unavoidably. You need more bodies.
Yeah. Bustin says size is an issue, but if you want pure speed, Brennan Thompson, wide receiver out of Mississippi State, is very quick. There's a chance he is the fastest player at the combine.
How small is
so? Like a 5'11", 5'10", 5'11". I can get that from you real fast.
Let's get him to 5'12".
I think he's like one of those 5'10", 180 kind of guys. Mekhi Lemon's 5'11", 198. So like that's where you're stocky enough to be a little shorter, and that's okay. So which wide receiver best fits Cam's strengths, or do you want to draft to bolster a weakness? I would take the best possible wide receiver in the draft period.
He'll make Cam better.
Whoever you think is the best, Tyson or Tate or Lemon early, or then maybe later first round or top of the second round. There's lots of really good options at 35 at wide receiver. I am convinced the right thing to do is edge, receiver, corner. That is the right thing to do strategically in their draft. I don't know if it's going to line up with what they see on their board.
Yeah, you can never stack it up not knowing who's there, who they like, who other people are taking.
Yep, no question about it. Lemon fits Cam best, says Ryan. I tend to agree. I think he's a guy who just will get open and catch everything that's thrown his way in every situation. I think that's what you need, but that's my what am I? What do I know? Quickly, Super Bowl. So here's how this is how it's been in my brain this whole time. Sinkers Beverages, by the way, for all your Super Bowl needs. Make sure you check out Sinkers. They've got all kinds of great stuff for your Super Bowl, big game party, whatever it is you're going to do on Sunday. Seattle's the better football team. Mike Vrabel with 2 weeks to prepare is terrifying. Do you have a different approach to the game than that?
No, I agree with that. I think anybody that's discounting New England straight on the talent is making a mistake. Seattle's more talented. But, New England was more talented than the Giants twice and lost. I mean, it's not straight. Talent wins in the Super Bowl these days, or in a football game these days. I think it'll be a good, tight, intelligently played game. Drake May has had some trouble in the playoffs. They've also played against some really good defenses, and they're going to play against another really good defense here. I would think it's going to be more of a defensive football game.
The chess match between the coordinators on each side is very interesting. It should be a lot of good stuff. Strength on strength and weakness on weakness. I mean, it's very, very good. So, Bustin said he's emptying the bank on the Patriots money line. There you go. They have a deal with the devil. I'm convinced.
I mean, that 2-week preparation thing is a big storyline. I haven't seen much about it yet, but it should be. He's beaten good teams that were more talented for sure by plotting and scheming for 2 weeks. And
the Kansas City Chiefs.
McDonald is very good coach, but this is the biggest stage that he's been on. And Mike Vrabel's been on this stage before as a player, and he's been in, these kind of games before as a coach, at 2 AFC championship games. So I'm not dismissing him from anything.
What is your general Super Bowl tradition? What's your Sunday look like?
Yeah, I usually stay home and watch it and pay attention pretty specifically to be able to discuss it intelligently. Sometimes get invited out, usually go maybe for the first half, but we don't have any tradition. If we got invited somewhere, we might go. The people who most likely to invite us will probably be sick of us if their power goes back on, because they're staying with us right now.
Oh man, good for you. Good for you to open up Hotel.
No, it's been great. It's been great. We've had a good time.
I think I think my tradition might be to go to a party for the first half and make sure I'm watching the second half at my house. Yeah. I really like leaving at halftime. Now with kids that really love the halftime show, with little ones. Now my oldest is getting more into the game now, and she was like watching the is it 2018 the Malcolm Butler play, the Seahawks, and she was like, Dad, this is one of the best Super Bowls of all time, and we watched some of it, and so she's more into the actual inner workings of the game. But man, the halftime show is a big deal at my household. So
educate me on Bad Bunny. Will this performance be part English, part Spanish?
I'll be curious.
Last night his acceptance speech was predominantly in Spanish.
I think a lot of that was based on what his message was around all the ongoings in our country currently. I am curious. I don't listen to a ton of his music. I listen to a lot of Kendrick Lamar, so I was into that. But I am curious what it looks like, what he decides to do. Because for those that don't know, getting the halftime show, you don't get paid, but you get basically 130 million people on your product for free. You have to pay for everything. So you pay for a lot of the dancers and the choreography and the music and the stat. Like you have to pay for a lot of the show itself out of your own budget.
The staging.
I imagine he will be making his own statement of some sort, if I had to guess. And I'm go for it, man. I'm all for it. Like this whole like stick to sports crew that's been around for 15 years now, I don't think they understand how sports work in American society. They have been interwoven, sports and culture, for I did book reports on Jackie Robinson my whole life. Like I don't know how we can talk sports and not talk about how it matters to our culture and to our society. So I imagine he will be making a statement of some sort, whether it's in English or Spanish. I don't know, PK. I'm not. Look, I aged
good in the
out.
Comments are saying they want worldwide artists, and he certainly qualifies as such right now. And that's on the day that they reveal that they're playing in Paris this year.
My I don't know why I immediately thought of I can't remember who was doing it, and it doesn't matter because I don't really want to give them airtime. But somebody, why are we letting an immigrant do the halftime show? He's from Puerto Rico.
Well, there's a lot of confusion about where Puerto Rico stands ever since the paper towel throwing.
I'm like I've been 6 times, never needed my passport once. PK,
you have? Is that a regular vacation spot for you?
It used to be. My dad worked there for a while, and my bachelor party was there. And no, I love Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico's great. Puerto Rico's awesome. All right. Anyway,
good show. This has been a good show. Dense show. Not for the dense, but there's a lot of weight to it.
But approachable as well.
Oh yeah, we're very approachable.
Like a nice, heavy milk stout from East Nashville Beer Works or Yazoo Brewing Company or Jackalope or Black Abbey or any of those great local breweries. Tennessee Brew Works.
Name every brewery.
Nope, just those. Those are the ones that matter. You can pick those all up at Sinkers Beverages, by the way. All those great breweries, you can buy those at Sinkers Beverages. Support good local breweries. Go to a tap room. It's good for civilization. It's good for your health. Drink in moderation, please. So there you go.
It's a beautiful parting message. I mean, what could I possibly add?
Nothing. Nick will add an actual analysis of the game on Thursday of the Super Bowl. We'll talk about that, and maybe the whole coaching staff will be set in stone. So we'll see.
I've got a story up at paulkuharsky.com. Robert Saleh talked about doing his homework on the Titans while the Titans did their homework on him. How much could he actually have learned? I try to answer that.
He said 4 hours. He had 4 hours of stuff that he said he could have talked about, PK. I think he was talking to you actually about that.
It was not my question. But
that's right. It was not.
It was a good answer.
That's
I certainly got my share of questions in. Don't worry about it.
You did. You asked who the next offensive coordinator was going to be, which I appreciate.
I think it's important. People were giving me crap for that.
No.
I prefaced it. I said, I'm not trying to get Brian out of here, but it's been a thing in the past.
I am not. I understand the line of thinking. I understand. It was out in the press or in the public that there was a succession plan presented in his interview process, and this organization has dealt with Matt LaFleur 1 year and done. So I don't know why it wouldn't be it's certainly a relevant topic, PK. I am not insulting your question. I just
enjoy the rest of your day off today, Braden. It's snow day.
What? Look, I'm sorry, but you don't have a 7 and a 9-year-old while your wife's trying to work as well in your house. I need them to go back to school, and I need.
Don't be sorry. I'm not sorry at all. I'm very excited that I don't.
I don't know why you're be downgrading me like this, BK. Go to Sinkers Beverages. I hate you. Everybody, thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time. Peace and love.